Jake.
Yeah, what's going on?
Doing well. Great to have you on. Nice to see you.
You as well. You as well. I'm pumped, man.
Yeah, same here. We're just gonna wait another minute or so, let some more people come on, and then we'll get right to it.
Sure, dude. Sure. Whatever works for the people of Syracuse, man.
Appreciate that. How's everything in LA? How's the weather today?
The weather is pretty good. I can't complain. I'll be going on a long walk later this afternoon to just relax, decompress from a good week. So excited about that. But focus is right here, right now with you guys.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty hot out here in New York too. Sweating so much. All right, let's get started. 3 o'clock. Thank you all for joining. I'd love to welcome a very special guest, a mentor of mine since day one in the sport business journey, Jake Kelfer, two-time best-selling author of Elevate Beyond and Elevate Your Network, founder of the Professional Basketball Combine, which has helped over 70 NBA prospects sign their first NBA contract, whether that be two-way, one-way, G League, NBA, and world-traveling motivational speaker. Fun fact, Jake's first job out of college was actually with the Los Angeles Lakers during Kobe Bryant's final NBA season. So Jake, you've obviously had an amazing story, amazing path. Can you just please walk me through a little bit about your career background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I'll give you a background, and while I'm getting ready to do that, for anyone that's listening here, let me know what area of sport business you guys are interested in. Because what I want to do is maybe tailor a little bit of my answers and some of the stuff that we talk about today to really suit you guys, right? We got an intimate group here, so I want to make sure that we maximize that time. So as I start to tell a little bit of my background, go ahead, you guys, put in the chat box. I think we'll both be able to have access to that. But yeah, a little bit about my background. I grew up in a town called Santa Clarita Valley, which is right in the middle of a hub of a theme park called Six Flags. So growing up, we'd always used to go there and have a blast. But for me, you know, the pillars of my life, the three things that always were my staples were academics, athletics, and family. You know, I'm very, very fortunate, and I'll preface it with this. I'm very, very fortunate to have two parents and a younger brother who support me and encourage me and love me, because that's played a big role in my willingness and my ability to go for things that most people think are crazy, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about that today, is how do you have this ambition, right? Regardless if you have experience or the relationships, to really give it your all and do something that not other people are willing to do, right? So for me, I was very lucky. Family was a really big part of my life growing up. Sports were a big part of my life. But the common story that you always hear, and I'm no exception here, is I'm a 5'8" Jewish kid from the suburbs, right? Like the dream of playing in the league, you know, for me, unfortunately, it ended my senior year of high school. I was a kid, though, growing up where I was the underdog, right? Being the smallest kid, always trying to find my way to get into that next step. You know, overcoming the adversity of being, you know, the smallest guy on the varsity team, you know, trying to figure out how do we continue to improve. And that mentality of finding ways to get the competitive advantage is one of the single biggest reasons for my success in business and my success internship in colleges, my success with getting the job at the Lakers, because you got to find something that distinguishes you from everyone else. And then the third part of my upbringing was focusing on this academics. You know, my parents were one of those people, were those parents that said, hey, if sports don't work out, and they probably had an inkling, like they didn't want to tell me, but they probably had an inkling, right? And they were like, if sports doesn't work out, you know, we want you, they always wanted me to be academically inclined. And there was two things that had to happen within school. Whether or not I liked school, the only rules were I have to put 110% effort every single time into my assignments. And I got to continue to try and be willing to learn. And if I do those things, they didn't care if I got a B or if I got a C, because they wanted me to learn and to explore and enjoy what academics really was. And to be honest, school sometimes holds us back from really enjoying that, right? Because we have to take a certain class. But then when you find those classes that you really like, everything starts to click. Those guest speakers start to resonate. You start to take action because the right person came in your life at the right moment. So that's what I got for you. That's a little bit of the background. I ended up, as I said, not making it to the MBA. Decided to pursue my academic route. Went to the University of Southern California. Studied business administration, minored in sports media studies. and following my career there. And we could talk a little bit more about college experience and stuff if you want to dive into that. But following my career, started my job at the Lakers, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I mean, can you kind of take us through what, you know, senior year Jake looking for a first-time job, like ready to take on the world? What was your thought process behind like the job process, behind setting yourself up for a better position than others? Can you please take us through that?
Yeah, so I think it's very important to note that what job you get after you graduate begins while you're in school, okay? Because what you have to do to maximize your college experience is you got to find ways to distinguish yourself so that when it is your final semester, you already either have a job or you're ready to just start crushing these interviews because you already have the backing and the resume and the experience. I mean, if you remember when I first met you, right, I think it was your freshman year, right?
Mm-hmm.
I told you, I said, go find every single agent in the NVPA directory and reach out to as many of them as possible so you start building the relationship. Because here's something that we will never get back in our life, and that's time. We will never get our time back in college. For most people, only happens 4 or 5 years, right? Mm-hmm. And what we have to do, so for me in college, what I would say is like senior year, I would go back a step. My sophomore, my junior year, I would go to all the networking events. I joined the Sports Business Association. I held a leadership position. I tried to get experience in all different aspects of sports. 1, so I could learn what I liked and what I didn't. 2, so I could see what I was good at and what I actually wasn't good at. Because there's a big part of life, which is you got to enjoy what you're doing, right? And I didn't want to jump into a career. I didn't want to jump into a ticket sales job if I didn't like to sell tickets, right? I didn't want to jump into a video coordinator job if I didn't want to handle the camera. I don't want to be on the court if I wanted to be in the business side, right? So you have to start thinking about those things. But for me, my senior year was really interesting because I had gotten in my internship my junior summer going into my senior year. My dream company was a company called Relativity Sports at the time, the dream agency. And now they ended up folding and rebranding into ISC. And I got that dream internship, best internship I'd ever had. I worked for them again. They invited me to stay in the fall. So I thought, going into my last semester of college, I was like, this is the company I'm going to work for. I'm going to be on pace to achieve my dream of being an agent, be the youngest sports agent in history, go on, make a ton of money, sign a lottery pick. I thought life was so good, right? I thought I had it all figured out. Well, they tell me at the beginning of that semester, they say, hey, Jake, we actually can't bring you on full time when you graduate. And it kind of was one of those shockers of like, wait a sec. So what have we been doing, right? Like, and I'm not going to say that the experience was, but I started to wonder like, okay, now what, right? Because I had put my eggs in that basket. But that whole time, I was still networking. I was still building relationships. I was still improving my resume so that if something like that happened, I'd be prepared. So right in that moment, I had to figure out, okay, what's next? What's on the table? And what I actually did, and what I recommend to anybody that's in college who wants to work in pro sports, or any type of sports, to be honest, is what I did is I made a list of every NBA team and every NFL team. I know that those were the 2 sports I wanted to work in out of college. I made a list of every single NBA team, every single football team. Wrote down every single department that I was interested in working in, found every single contact within that department in their LinkedIn, found any commonality that I could to help me get a response from them. And then I started reaching out. Now, this process is what I do today on a day-to-day basis for businesses. You grow and you grow, right? But one of the things I think is super important here for me is I started with where I really wanted to be, which for me was the Lakers. SoCal kid, wanted to play for the Lakers growing up. Now's my chance to work for the Lakers. And so what I did was I reached out to people that was in the Lakers. And from there, everything started to click. And at the end of my first informational interview with someone, they actually asked me if I would want to potentially apply for their assistant position that upcoming season. Now, the big thing with that though was I applied, but they said, we won't have a final answer until after you graduate. So then it became, do I fall back on my belief in myself and the purpose of the vision that I have? Or do I take some other opportunity just because it was available and it was a way to put money in my pocket right away? And I think that's a really important question to ask everybody that's listening here is the job that you're seeking the one that you want just so you can say you have a job? Or is the job that you're seeking the one that's going to get you to where you want to be? And you may have to take a few internships, a few jobs, a few experiences to learn exactly what that vision looks like. But that's a little bit about the background, that senior year transition into starting the full-time life.
Thank you for explaining that. We have a question from the audience, but I actually wanted to just jump in real quick and ask, was there anybody that you met at Relativity Sports that you still keep in contact with today that like really helped you understand what the sport business landscape could be?
Yeah, I mean, I stay in touch with a lot of people. It's funny. One of my best relationships in my life comes not from someone who was above me at Relativity, but from somebody who was one of the interns with me. And you guys are all familiar with him, is Chris Henderson. Mm-hmm. So the crazy thing about this is sometimes in our life, we always seek to connect with the people that are above us, right? And that's important because we need to learn from them. But sometimes the people that are equal to us or even a little bit below us or younger than us, those are the people that might have the most significant impact on you in your future. And so when I think about that, Chris is one of my guys. He helped me build the professional basketball combine as a senior in college. Like when there's opportunities like that, it comes down to the people that you trust and that you build relationships with. But there's one person in particular from Relativity. Her name's Heather Carrots. And she went on from Relativity to be the general counsel, I believe, at the Los Angeles Football Club, the soccer team. And then she went on to be the president of the XFL LA Wildcats. Obviously, the XFL had their issues and stuff of what happened with everything. But I stay in touch with her, went to a game. Like she has been an incredible person to stay in touch with. But it all began because we had built that relationship during that internship when I was still in school. And I stayed in touch because she was above where I'm at. And she's still above where some people are, right? But it's about consistently staying in touch with people that you want to continue to have relationships with.
Thank you for that. I mean, I appreciate a lot of people, like, it's important to network up, but it's also more important to network across because, in 5 to 10 years from now, everybody who's at the intern level will be in the full-time positions. So thank you for, like, really diving in on that. So Jack Adler had a question, which is, what was your experience like with the Lakers? Are there any specific experiences or things you learned working there that you believe would have helped shape your career or future?
Yeah, there was a lot of things that helped shape my career and future there, Jack. But let me explain what I did with the Lakers. So when I was with the Lakers, my job was the corporate partnerships assistant. So I was responsible. My favorite task that I was responsible with was on game nights, on game days. I was responsible with a group of the other assistants to pick all the contestants for all of the halftime contests. So I got to pick the half court person. We got to pick the Toyota Skills Challenge. We got to help put the brands with the people who had won like meet and greets. We got to do all those things that had anything to do with brand activation. And there were two defining moments really for me within that Lakers organization. But one of my experiences that really shaped the future for me was an experience I had with Jerry West. And Jerry West is, I'm sure everyone listening knows who Jerry West is, but I mean, he's the NBA logo, right? He's the NBA logo, and I'm in an elevator, and I'm going to tell a little story if you don't mind, and I'll loop it in. So I'm in the elevator. And it's just like any other game night. I'm about to go meet a contestant down on the event level. The event level had all the courtside seats. It's where the VIPs were, but it's also where we brought down the people to go into the tunnel. And as the door's about to close, all of a sudden a hand jumps in and the door starts to open, right? And the person that walks in the door was Jerry West. Now, I'm a 22-year-old assistant, bottom of the totem pole. Jerry's the NBA logo about as high on the totem pole as you can go. I'm like a legend, right? And my heart just starts pounding. I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do? But I was like, this is what we train for, right? We find ways to get ourselves into opportunities that can lead to something. And I don't know what's going on right at that moment in my life, but I'm like, there's a situation, we got to capitalize. So the first thing that happens is the person who's working the elevator, he looks at Jerry, okay? He looks at Jerry and he says, what floor do you want to go to? And Jerry, of course, says the event level, that's where his seats are. The person who's working the elevator looks back at Jerry and he says, Jerry. All right, well, he doesn't say Jerry, he doesn't know who Jerry is. He goes, do you have a credential? And Jerry kind of looks at him and is like, very politely, he goes, do you know who I am? And the guy looks at him and goes, no, I don't know who you are, but if you don't have a credential, I can't escort you down right now. And then he looks at me and is like, this person has a credential and he needs to get down for work. So I'm gonna have to ask you to step off to Jerry. And I was like, no way, what's about to happen? So Jerry's about to walk off. And in that moment, for some reason, dude, in that very moment, I'm like, wait. He's with me. Pointing at Jerry, I'm like, he's with me, he's my guest. And the person working the elevator looks back at me and he says, are you sure? And so I look at Jerry and I'm like one of these, like, you good with that? Because I don't want to overstep. Jerry looks at me, nods my head. I turn back at the guy working the elevator. I nod my head. And Jerry West, I escort him down. Here's the moment that changed everything for me. We get off the elevator. And I wasn't sure if Jerry was going to be pissed that I had stand up for him, pissed at the elevator guy. I didn't know his name. I didn't know how he was going to react. But as we're about to walk and we're about to split off and go our separate ways, Jerry looks at me, sticks out his hand, shakes my hand, and says, "Thank you. I really appreciate what you just did for me." And that was the moment. That was the moment when I realized that people are people. That was the moment that I realized it doesn't matter how old you are, how tall you are, how much money you have, what your status is, how entry level you are. We all have the ability to make somebody feel like they matter. And in that moment, Jerry West made me feel like $1,000,000. And I had that experience that said, how can I make other people in my life feel this way? How can I help other people have the same feeling that Jerry just gave me, regardless of this? How can I show so much generosity and sincerity that life becomes great for everyone else, right? And that moment kind of put me on the trajectory that led me to eventually writing my first book over the next 6 months, which has now led me to speak all over the world, start the Combine, and always remember that it doesn't matter who you are, everybody's got something to value. So Jack, that's a great question, but there are a lot of things that, and maybe that wasn't where you thought the answer was going to go when you said experience with the Lakers, but there are the most unexpected experiences come out from a variety of different experiences. And it's about finding experiences and living those experiences and allowing the lessons to be learned by yourself, like in those moments, and then acting on those based off what you're learning.
Wow. I mean, that's an incredible story. And, you know, I can only imagine what it must have felt like to say, you know, Jerry West is with me. Let everybody else aside. So, you know, being around Kobe in his last year, you know, what do you think made him so special in comparison to everybody else that you may have come in contact with, whether that be a player, even an employee in the company? Like, everybody that I always listen to that talks about Kobe Bryant in the Lakers organization talks about how special of a person he was. You know, did you ever get a chance to see anything around the Staples Center or around the offices?
So I didn't get to see too much with Kobe, and a lot of times too when we did have practices, he was kind of doing his own thing, and part of that was because that season was unlike a normal season for him, right? It was Kobe and the young guys, so it was a unique season in the sense that as an employee of the Lakers, at least in my opinion, right? I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody else, but in my opinion, that season was one of the best seasons I could have possibly worked for the team because everybody wanted to get access to Kobe, right? But if you're not going to win a championship, the next best thing is to suck, but have Kobe Bryant do his goodbye tour, right? Because you're getting to see the final experience. You're getting to see everybody come in. All the celebrities are coming to the games, everything like that. But here's something that I did notice about Kobe when he did play and everything that he did that was different than all the younger guys. And we could talk about other stories as well, but this is something that I saw during that year. The thing that I saw is that Kobe Bryant had a different sense of focus than everybody else. Like there was a guy, Kobe is a guy that knew exactly the outcome he wanted to achieve. And one, he believed that he was going to get there because most of the time in those things he had done it over and over again, which had built a routine for him. And that he had stuck to that routine, and that's why he was one of the best performers. But Kobe, the thing that I saw is he would walk in, other guys would walk in and they'd be joking around, they'd be hanging out. Kobe walks in, walks down that tunnel, the guy is focused. And he's focused on a singular thing, which is how can I play and give the fans their best experience possible for that night. That's what I associated with him when he would come on the court, because he knew that every game was one time that the audience might have been able to see him. He knew that some people would spend their life savings to fly across the world to see him in that game. So when he came out to play, he was focused on giving people the greatest experience in his last time. That's my observation, right? Is that exactly what was going through his head? I don't know. But that was my observation, and I believe it's in alignment with every other story that you hear about Kobe, right? Mm-hmm. Because there's a relentless pursuit to greatness and whatever it is that you want to achieve. And oftentimes that comes with a visualization, with a thought that leads to an action that leads to the results over time. Kobe practiced the fundamentals. He was better at those than everybody else. He worked harder than everybody else. He did the things that other people weren't willing to do. Those were the most basic things to distinguish you from somebody else in getting a job, in setting out in business, in starting a business, and getting a promotion. Do what everyone else does better than they do, then do things that no one's willing to do and exceed all expectations.
Thank you for tying that in. So I kind of want to give a little shift to this, and I want to ask you a little bit about your book. So, you know, obviously you have Elevate Beyond, you have Elevate Your Network. what are some of the main takeaways from Elevate Your Network that could really help an individual like myself enter into the industry, or at least broaden my horizons?
Yeah, man. I mean, there's a lot of key takeaways. And the way the book's structured is it's broken down in 25 Kelf keys. Each one of those essentially a chapter, a lesson, a networking strategy technique to use and implement as you build out your networking reputation. But there are a few that I think are really, really important that continue to play into effect regardless of the level of person that I'm talking to. And one of those things is, and this is something that's not very common in networking advice and connecting advice, but it's to be a good listener, okay? And the reason that I say be a good listener is so important is because we understand as human beings that people want to feel that they're heard, right? People want to know that you're in the present moment with them, right? Because you can tell when you're talking to someone and they're just texting, you're like, really, dude? Like, are you serious? It makes you feel less than, right? It makes you feel that they don't care about what you're talking about. When you are being a good listener, you're listening not with the intent to respond, but with the intent to process and then respond, okay? So when you're being a good listener, it's about more than just hearing what they're saying. It's about acknowledging what they're saying. It's about nodding your head in response to what they're doing. It's about making eye contact with them. It's about giving nonverbal cues. For me, I have bushy eyebrows. It's a huge advantage when I'm listening to someone because I can raise my eyebrows and they know that like I'm feeling what they're saying. That's the vibe that you can give off from that, right? So being a good listener is a huge way to develop empathy and trust immediately within a conversation, and then responding with questions that are relevant to what that person is saying rather than just a completely random question or something, right? You see what I'm saying there? Like, and it's really important that, and there's different settings, right? There are some questions that we have to get to, right? In an interview, there might be different questions as you as the interviewee need to ask based on the responses that they're saying or the information they're giving as the interviewer so that you can maximize that experience and make sure that you're paying attention. So be a good listener is super, super important. The second thing that's really, really important and is to have a we mentality over a me mentality, okay? And here's what that means. This may seem obvious, right? Like work together, teamwork makes the dream work. Here's what that means. Because a lot of people in sports have a me mentality. It's an ego-driven mentality. And part of that's because it's in our nature to just have a me mentality, right? Like we want ourselves to succeed. But here's what a me mentality thinker sounds like. They ask questions like, what can you do for me? What can I get from this interaction? How can I use you to get to where I want to go? And look, I'm not going to lie. I have to think about this all of the time because naturally we go towards what am I going to get out of this situation, right? Like, why am I going to network with this person if there's nothing that I'm going to get from it, right? Like we start to think about these things and we start to question like, what is going on? That's a me mentality. A we mentality, on the other hand, though, is when you start to ask questions, what can we do for each other? How can we both help each other get to where we want to go, right? And you start to genuinely root for other people. Now, here's where it gets tricky. The next question that people always say, well, Jake, well, what about competition? If we're both competing for the same job, what happens, right? Mm-hmm. When you compete, there's a thing called healthy competition. I want you to succeed, but I'm going to beat you for that job, right? Think about two players. Think about Kobe and Michael. You know, if you watched Last Dance, you saw Kobe in that All-Star game. Kobe wanted to beat Michael and Michael wanted to beat the crap out of him. Because they both were competitive and they wanted to see each other win, they both became better as a result of that. That's what we have to focus on is how do we both get to the top of the mountain? Not how do I climb on the mountain and look down at you when you fell because I stepped on you. You see what I'm saying there? Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about the networking principles, it's always coming from a place of serving others. It's always coming from a place of asking yourself, how can I add value to this situation that makes it a win-win for the two parties, okay? And that's a huge, huge thing. And if you do those steps, if you're a good listener and you focus on helping others, you're gonna have incredible success along the way, guaranteed.
Thank you for that. And one of the things that really stuck out to me was, providing value for everybody, but also when you're listening, like don't just let everything go in one ear and out the other, and maybe send a quick email and never like respond to that person again or reach out to that person again. Continue to follow up, jot down different, aspects of what you've heard. And maybe you can bring that up sometime in the future where the person that you originally spoke to would really appreciate that.
That's an unbelievable point, Ben. Unbelievable point.
Thank you. So, you know, within your book, like you talk about a lot of aspects of networking and entrepreneurship, but is there any book besides your two that have shaped your outlook on entrepreneurship?
There's a ton of books. There's a ton of books. And I might have to just send you guys a book list after this because I'm a huge reader. But there's two books recently that have played a really big role for me. And that's a book called The One Thing. It's called The One Thing, and it's written by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. And The One Thing is all about identifying what is the one thing that's most important that if you do it, everything else becomes irrelevant, right? And so if we're focusing on getting a job, what's the one thing that we can do that gets us closer to getting that job, right? Singular focus, because we talk about having priorities. Well, priority in definition, and you can look it up, prior means before. So priority, in theory, should mean you do this before everything else. That means you can't have multiple priorities at once, right? Here's the thing. People don't lack time. They lack priorities. So when we complain about not having enough time to do work, to go party, to go do all these internships, to show up at networking events, we lack the priorities. We have the time, right? Mark Zuckerberg created Facebook. He had the time. Tony Robbins does Tony Robbins. Everyone's got the time. So that's a big book to focus on, right? Is really figuring out what is our priority so that we can have the most enjoyment in our life and get closest to our vision in the quickest time possible. The second book that's really played a big role in how I think about entrepreneurship and how I pursue my life is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he talks all about, it's all about building habits and how you can create a structure and routines that lead to the right rewards and set yourself up to have efficient productivity and grow your sales and grow, anything that you're looking for, right? And so that book's played a really big role on me. So those are the two that I would share right now. And then I'd say, just keep reading. Reading is always good. Learn from people that are experts in a specific area that you want to improve upon, right? Read biographies. I love the Dick Sporting Goods biography. I love the Bob Iger Disney biography. I love the Netflix biography, like the Zappos biography. Like, read those things from people that are in positions that have done things that you want to do. Success will always leave clues. It's up to you to find the people, ask the right questions, listen to the answers, because the answers might be better than what you originally were seeking. And then go implement the answers and turn that into action as you move forward.
That's great. And do you still, so you clearly have a huge importance or place a huge importance on value of books. Do you have that same value when it comes to listening to podcasts as well? Or do you like to more, close everything out around you and just stay focused on one thing?
I consume books in paperback form most of the time. I listen to some podcasts, but to be honest, lately, I haven't been traveling as much, obviously, due to the situation. And so I haven't listened to a ton of podcasts. The podcasts that I listen to when I'm doing right now, my strategy is I'm listening to podcasts that are super relevant for what I'm trying to do and achieve in my business. So if I'm trying to improve my online marketing, I'm going to listen to the best episodes from the best people of online marketing, because I also know that I can then take a picture of that screenshot of that story. And then what I can do is post that on social media, and that can start to build my name recognition with that person. Then I can follow them on social media and connect with them if I'm not already doing that already. And then it starts the web of networking that starts to build my relationship, which then leads me to being able to ask great questions, and the cycle all repeats itself. And that's a continuous web. So for me, it's about skill-specific podcasts right now. And then obviously recommended ones, like I'll listen to a Joe Rogan and Elon, or I saw Joe Rogan and Kevin Hart. Like, I love stuff like that. But right now, because my time is limited, I want to focus on things that are going to better my skill set right now and develop my networking, continue out my connection plan based off that. For sure.
In terms of entrepreneurship, was there a specific moment that made you decide then, this is what I want to do? I don't want to just go out and work for anybody. I want to create.
I think, so both my parents are very entrepreneurial. So I kind of grew up with an entrepreneurial mindset, okay? When I got to college, my freshman year was the first time that I was like, I need to start an official business. In high school, I was smart in math. math is my thing. Like, I'm a math nerd, okay? Like, I just love numbers. And when I was in high school, I didn't like think of this as super entrepreneurial, but like, I didn't want to go get a regular job, and I couldn't as a two-sport athlete. So what did I do? I started tutoring people, and I was able to charge $25 an hour, right, to tutor people, which is way better than any job I would have gotten. And I picked my own hours. But I didn't consider that super entrepreneurial. Like, it wasn't my intention in that time. It was just, I wanted to make a little extra money. I had a skill set. I could solve a problem. I got to college and I was like, okay, I want to actually try to start a business. So I started my very first business my freshman year of college, called Straight Curve Marketing, which was a t-shirt and promotional product companies that basically served all of the high school, all of the college fraternities that I could get my hands on, and all my friends, and all the clubs and organizations that I get my hand on. And that's what I started doing, because I needed to use that money to pay my dues for my fraternity if I wanted to stay in it. And to me, that was how I was going to build it. And with my fraternity being our #1 customer, it made things a little bit better, right? But that was like the first like real taste of like filing for a DBA, which is doing business as, like, legal documents, right? And that kind of continued and continued and continued. And then when I graduated, when I finished with the Lakers and I launched this book, Elevate Beyond, that was when I started my next business that has taken me these last 4 years to where we are today.
Mm-hmm. And so you've started the professional basketball combine from scratch. I saw it happen, and I can speak to that myself. What inspired you to do this? Was it passion for helping athletes? Was it just your creative juices were flowing, you needed to go and do something? And what were some of the challenges that went into making it happen? What's coming up next for the combine as well? I know that we're in a very difficult period right now with the virus affecting the NBA schedule year round. So can you kind of just take us through that a little bit, please?
Yeah, so I'll talk about like why we want to start it, and we'll talk about the challenges. But I'm representing right now, baby. I came prepared. I love it. But look, so for me, I want to take you back. Here's my timeline, okay? I'm working at the Lakers, first year out of college. I worked that season. I launched my book. Kobe retires. I launched my book. Then I start my business, okay? But I still needed to find a way to keep my thirst alive in sports. And I still wanted to be a sports agent, okay? I still thought that was what I wanted to do in sports, because all the time I was with the Lakers, and even as I started this book and was traveling, I was using this as a way to get in with different agents. I was continuing to networking. So when the NBA announced that there was going to be a two-way contract available in 2017, I realized immediately that meant there was going to be 60 more roster spots for the NBA, right? 60 more roster spots created overnight with the opportunity to make up to $275,000. That was 10 times more than what you could make in the G League at the time, okay? I knew there was going to be a huge thirst for that. No one really knew how it was going to go about. So what I did was like, okay, this might be my way in. What if I created an event that could have all these secondary prospects, the guys that don't get invited to the first NBA combine, but I have the second prospects that were either overlooked, had some issues, didn't play much on a really great team, or played a ton on a team that didn't have like the clout, but we need an opportunity. Then I also thought, the way the NBA is moving, guys are taking chances on people from smaller schools that didn't have as much experience. We're in the potential game, right? So like, okay, what if we could create a secondary NBA draft combine? And there's a ton that goes into this, but essentially we ended up creating a secondary combine that hosted 24 guys in over 2 days in front of NBA execs, and the agents got to I got to call every agent. I got to call agent, hey, do you want to send your guy here? Hey, this is what we're doing. The amount of agents, because what I wanted to do was see what type of agents did I want to become, right? Maybe if this went really well, one of the agents would love the initiative and see the hustle that I had, and then say, hey, we want you to work on our team. We want you to come to our agency. But at that time, I would also know what style these agents are. Do they have ethics? Are they backstabbing? Do they have we versus me, right? Like, what was their mentality? The amount of times, so when we started, and this starts getting to the challenges part, is here I was about 1.5 years removed from college, limited network. It wasn't like I was around and knew every GM like some of these agents already did. But I had this idea that this would be a great way to help players, which is why I wanted to be in the agent game in the first place. I wanted to have players that had a chance to grow and compete at the highest level. And so what I would do is I picked up, just like I told you, I called every single agent in the NBPA directory, called them, tried to pitch them on the idea, explain what was going on. Most of them just said, no, we're not interested. A lot of them said, Jake, if this could have been done, it would have already been done. A lot of them said, this will never work. 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 Or, you know what? Pull it off and then I'll come back. And it was brutal, dude. I mean, it was brutal because then the timeline started to get closer together, okay? Now, here's where the challenge gets crazy is the initial idea was to bring a ton of prospects in one location. When I reached out to the NBA to let them know exactly what was going on and like make sure that it was good, the NBA responded saying, hey, there are certain pre-draft rules that you have to follow. You can't have 100 players come to this event. You can only have groups of 6, 12 at a time, 24 over 2 days. And I was like, oh, that changes things. So immediately I had a shift from, okay, I want to try to get everybody to now we had to come up with the process of what 24 guys that we want to get. Then the next challenge came up. The next challenge was the agents that were interested were like, well, Jake, I got some players that I think would be really good for this. What NBA teams are coming? And then the NBA teams, I'd reach out to them and say, hey, we got this great event. We're going to have 24 guys. It's going to be able to bring everyone along one location. It's going to save you guys money on travel. And they said, well, what players do you got coming? And it was the chicken and the egg question. And so I'd have to tell the agents, look, we have teams that are very interested. And I'd have to be honest because I don't want to say, oh, every team was committed and then no one show up. And then vice versa, I didn't want to tell the teams what players were going to come if we didn't have any players. So I had to keep finding creative ways to get somebody, one of the agents, to actually send a player, to commit to a player. So then I could start to have the domino effect of once one happened, it would start to fall. And that was one of the biggest challenges in the very beginning. And then the last challenge, I mean, there are millions of them, but the last challenge was understanding that if I don't execute, if me and the team don't execute extraordinarily well on try number 1, there won't be a try number 2. What we have to do is run the event flawlessly, handle the logistics beautifully so that the team gets exactly what they come for, the players get exactly what they get for, and the agents get exactly what they come for. If we do that, in future years, we can add partners, we can grow, we can find other ways to do it. So the first year was the bare bones, perfected logistics to make it the best experience possible for the people that were involved that year before growth. And that was really hard as a first-time event, right? And so all of that, though, all of that taught me so much about leading a team. I brought on a team of 15 to 20 interns for that event. Like it was the first time I brought on a team that big. We had all these new things. And that, to me, looking back on it, like that was so fun. I was so stressed out. And you can ask my roommate at the time. Like I was up at 6 a.m. with East Coast people. I'm in the Pacific Standard Time. So I was up at 6 a.m. my time. And I'd go. And my phone would be on. I'd be checking everything. Like I was crazy. And now I've learned how to manage that time better. I've learned how to manage people better. And like, I would never have done any of that though if I didn't believe that I could solve a specific problem and create a solution that would be something that could make a difference. And that's what it has to come from. It's like, what are your skill sets? What are you really passionate about? And how can you go find a way to make an impact and make money doing it? And if you can do those things, you found the secret sauce.
Thank you for bringing us through that. One of the takeaways I got from that, and I wanted to ask a follow-up question, is, you talked about how you had to get through this process where you at least needed the first player for the domino effect to fall. A lot of people like to think that you got to fake it till you make it until something will fall through for you. What would you say to that?
I think you got to believe it till you make it. Okay. Fake it till you make it. There's pros and cons to that. But for me, it's just like, you have to believe in yourself that that's the type of person you already are. Right. So like, I'm one of those people that like, I do affirmations. Like I visualize what my future is. Like before games in high school, I would sit down, listen to my music. I would just visualize how I was going to perform. I would visualize me shooting the game-winning jump shot, hitting the free throws. Like I visualized all this stuff. You got to believe that it's going to happen. When you believe things are going to happen, in your mind, you start to do the things that person does. Right? You see what I'm saying there? So like, for me, like fake it till you make it is great. And there are times and places where you kind of got to be there. Like you got to act like you were already there. But to me, I think it's believe until you really make it. Because when you believe, your actions will be the same maybe as the fake it. Like if you go to a networking event and you're still trying to break in, right? Fake it till you make it is like faking it like, oh, you know what you're doing. You're doing all this great stuff. You're dressed up. You got your clothes, like looking good. Believe it till you make it is you know that what you're going to say and what you're going to do is going to make such a big impact that people are going to have no option but to hire you. That's what I think is really so important for people that are in the beginning of their careers, when they're starting businesses, when they're in college. Like you got to believe it to make it. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I was kind of say on that thought process.
That's great. So we're going to kick it to a question from the audience. Jordan Edelstein asked, when working in a partnership or relationship with someone, what are some ways to maintain a balanced, healthy we relationship rather than drifting towards a me stance?
Okay, so I'm pulling that question up too, because that was a lot. When working in a partnership or relationship with somebody, what are ways to maintain a balanced, healthy we relationship rather than drifting to a me stance? Okay, so here's the thing. First, look, there's so many different aspects here, but you got to identify what type of partnership or relationship is it, right? Okay, so you got to identify that first of all. Second of all, if you come from a place of genuine authenticity, okay? Authenticity, the words that are thrown around a lot. Genuine authenticity means that you are unapologetically you and who you are, regardless of what other people are going to think about you or what you think other people want you to be. Huge, huge. When it comes from a we mentality, is if you come from a place, though, of adding value and constantly wanting to make the team better, believing in something greater than just yourself, you will be able to stay in a we mentality. If you look at a lot of business leaders, there's a lot of CEOs that come into it, or a team, or a coach that comes into a team, and there's a mentality. And the coach has to change it. And sometimes, and the coach or the CEO, they start to implement their policies that are we focused, okay? But a lot of times people don't buy into that concept right away. They're like, we don't want to change the way we do. We want to keep getting our paychecks or whatever it is, right? But what sometimes you have to do with this we mentality is you have to continue to believe in it. You have to continue to go for it. And you have to continue to add value to show that what you're doing will produce better results than what everyone else is already currently doing. And when you can do that, when you stay in a we mentality, your ego falls away, your enjoyment increases, your level of gratitude increases, and you start to create partnerships because now people want to help you. It's a lot easier to get a job when there's 25 people advocating for you than one person advocating for you. And that's the power of constantly offering help and adding value. And look, there's a lot of people, right? A lot of college students ask me this, a lot of young entrepreneurs ask me this. How do I add value to somebody if I'm below them? How do I add value to someone if I don't have anything to offer them, right? A lot of people would say, some of the guests that you've had, probably some of your people are like, how can I add value to them? How can I add value to them? They already made it. They already have the job. I'm trying to get the job. Well, there's a lot of ways that you can add value to those people. And one of those ways, and I'll give you a couple of them if you think it'd be valuable. I mean, would it be valuable for you guys? Like, is that worth it? So a couple of those ways that you can add value, even when you think like you don't have anything to offer that person, is follow them on social media and comment on all their posts. Like, make a genuine comment on their post. Every person loves the feeling when they get a bunch of comments on their post. Because on their hand, one, it makes them feel good that people are listening, but two, another comment or two comments starts people to believe that they can comment. It takes away that feeling that you're commenting alone and that people are going to judge your comment. So it's like a double whammy right there. So comment on people, share people's stuff, right? Also going to build your name recognition for when you want to reach out for that relationship and that ask. Another way to do it is like, look, if you're a student, create a podcast, create a show, ask for informational interviews. People love to talk about themselves. It's the favorite thing that people like to do because, like I said, we all internally have these desires that we want to win, right? That we want to step up. So if you come from this place of asking somebody to talk about them and you listen to what they say, going back to being a good listener, and you listen and you ask them what they say and you use their name over and over again, that person is going to be more than happy to share with you. And then you follow up on top of that. Now there's so much value that you've added. And it was originally when you thought you had nothing to offer them other than just, willingness to work for free or willingness to do an internship. But now you've created something more powerful and you've established a difference between you and all the other people who want that job or who want to connect with that person because you've put in the work in advance.
It's very fascinating to me because for what seems like such a almost robotic approach to it in terms of you're going on your phone, you're not talking to anybody, being social, it's very personable at the same time. It's
100%.
almost like social distancing in a way. So, I was going to ask a follow-up to your PVC, to what we were talking about with the PVC. So what are some of the most important logistical elements that go into planning an in-person event from your perspective? You talked about how, especially for year one, you need all the little things to go right. What are some of those things?
Well, you need people to show up, right? Like if you have an event, and they don't show up, you're screwed because there's no event. So making sure, one of the things I put a huge priority on in year one was making sure all the housing arrangements were taken care of, making sure we had travel schedules, flight schedules, making sure we had people assigned to each one of these roles, because we need to make sure that the process went smoothly. So that was really important. But taking even before you get to the actual event, like you got to make sure you have the right facilities. You got to make sure you have the right people. You got to make sure you have the right insurance. You got to make sure you have all these things. I had no idea about any of this stuff, though. Let me tell you. I was like, when I first started, I was just like, I'm going to go to a basketball gym that can house people, and that we're going to play basketball. Like, that's what we're going to do. But then I was like, they were like, oh, do you have insurance for the event? Like, we need insurance. I was like, no, I have insurance. And then I called my uncle, who's a lawyer, and said, what do I do here? And he told me, like, go get this type of insurance, and then connected me with that person. I had to coordinate with the media to try to make sure that they come, because we wanted to start to build this reputation, right? And then on in terms of the actual event for the PBC, one of the most important things to execute during the event was the on-court training. If our trainers sucked and didn't give the right type of workout that the NBA teams wanted, it wouldn't do us any good. And also, if we did a workout that was too easy, it wouldn't give us a chance to really evaluate these players. You see, it's not like these guys were lottery picks at the time. So we wanted to find a way where we could have the best workout that would really showcase, give these guys maximum exposure, and really propel these guys from wherever they were in the draft rankings to the #1 spot that they could achieve. And for some of those players, they ended up on two-way deals. Antonio Blakeney ended up going from undrafted, two-way contract, G League Rookie of the Year, leading the league in scoring. And that was partially because of the trainer that we had. His name is Nick Friedman. He's a coach. He put them through such a good workout that teams were like, wow, these players are good. Like, they're doing game-like NBA situation skill sets. So that was also really important with it. And then the last thing, and this is the most important thing with everything, and it comes back to the #1 theme of today, which is connection, right? Networking, connection, is you have to be a good communicator with the people that are involved. If you have Jimmy John's bringing you sandwiches, communicate with them. Treat them extraordinarily well. If you have team executives coming in, you have to make sure you know when they're coming in. How can you escort them? Did you give them the right directions? You go above and beyond to serve the people, to communicate your message as effectively as possible. When you can do those things, you can start to have this idea of what an event should look like, and then execute it. And a lot of my knowledge of events came from experiences that I had as an intern in college. Okay? Came from experiences that I had working Adidas Nations, working at NBA Summer League, working at these events, and seeing, okay, what did they do that was so good? Rather than just working the event, I studied the events. I asked the questions, because someday maybe I was going to host my own. And the PBC was modeled after Albert Hall and Sergio Millis and the guys that did Adidas Nations, that do NBA Summer League. Like, those are some of my mentors, and their work has enabled me to build the combine to the place that it's gotten to.
That's incredible. And again, you just tie it in so well. So a lot of your work involves speaking engagements in person. How has the pandemic affected your day-to-day operations and your ability to, perform in front of crowds?
It's been huge. I'm not gonna lie. It was a pretty devastating blow when it first happened, because speaking is mostly done on the road up until March 10th, right? And so all of the events that I was going to be doing, right, which I was on pace to have one of my biggest breakout years, and all of those events either canceled or rescheduled. The combine, this is combine week. Like, we would have the combine Tuesday and Wednesday this week for this year. Like, it's such a bummer, right? But at the same time, I can't control any of that. Nothing that has happened is in my control. What is in my control, though, is how I choose to proceed. What is in my control is what am I doing every day to set myself up so that we can come out of this stronger, better. Now, have there been days during this quarantine where I felt like shit and didn't want to do anything? Yeah, there have been. There have been days where I'm like, no, I don't feel like doing anything. Today's a me day. Today's just a me day. And part of that just because, like, I'm normally on the road and then I'm staying at home. I'm stuck in my room, my office. Like, I've had to adjust. And so for me, I'm at a point now that we've done this for, a little over 2 months, is like, I'm in a groove. I'm hitting on all cylinders. We're picking things up. But I go back to something I said earlier, which is you got to believe it. You got to believe it. And what I started to doing was I'll believe it'll come out stronger. I'll believe that this is going to help me figure out problems in my business that now I can fix. Use this opportunity to grow in the areas that you need improvement in. And so that's what I've really been trying to do. And like I said, there have been days that ups and downs. Some days I'm feeling better than others. But now I've gotten into a routine. I've taken everything that I can control and I've put that into the positive light. My thoughts, my actions, my routines, my habits, everything along those lines now is starting to fire on all cylinders. And so now that we're talking right now, end of May, like I'm juiced up about what's to come. Like, let me tell you, I'm pumped about it because there's so much opportunity that's coming right ahead of us. And COVID, it sucks, but there's a lot of opportunity that's going to come out of this. And there are going to be people that take this time to really grow and develop themselves. So for me, it's been a hell of a ride, let me tell you.
I bet. So actually, while we're still on the subject, there's an anonymous attendee who asked a question, which is, I was wondering, what are the future plans for the PBC regarding COVID-19, both short-term and long-term? Are you able to talk about that, or should we steer away from that right now?
I can talk about anything we want to talk about. Here's what I can say about this though right now is short-term. Obviously, like I just said, it would have been this week. We would have had it this week. Right now, we're completely waiting for what the NBA is going to decide on the rest of the season, the draft process. We don't have all the answers at this point in time. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to just focus on doing the best that we can, right? We're trying to just focus on what are the elements that are in our control. And one of the things that we've done is our director of scouting, John Chepkevich. If any of you are interested in scouting, reach out to him immediately following this. He is amazing. He came onto our team, and I'll give you a quick story. He came onto our team, worked for us completely for free, and just offered to do scouting reports. I had no idea, gave him a chance. 2 years later, he's our director of scouting and is our lead of operations for that. He's now turned into, we do a virtual film room. So now we're getting prospects that were interested in the PBC agents. We're trying to say, how do we still provide value? How do we still keep these relationships going? John's doing film breakdown with them. And we're going over all these different things with these guys. And John's building his reputation as a better scouter. Like, he's improving because he's acting. He's doing the things that everyone talks about doing, but no one really does. He's doing it. We're connecting with agents. We're connecting with players. We're building the brand that way. So short term, our focus is on how do we continue to provide value at the highest level that we're capable of in the very moment that we have right now. And long term, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But we're excited about it.
Well, I hope that they still go on with the draft process and that, everything goes back to hopefully normal. So we have a couple more questions. Two of them are somewhat similar. So the first one is, what pushed you to continue on with it continue on with the PBC after agents in the industry told you it would not work? And then the other question that's similar is from Justin Sachs, who I know interned for you, which is awesome for the PBC. Jake, what's up, man? Hope all is well. My question is, what is your biggest fear? How do you manage fear and establish your confidence to take a leap of faith? So, I mean, you had to take a leap of faith in order to continue on after the agents told you no. So yeah, how do you manage all that?
So let's break these both down into one question at a time. There is overlap, but like I want to specifically hit on it. So what pushed me to continue on when all the other agents told me it wouldn't work? To be honest, part of it was I didn't know what I didn't know. Meaning that maybe if I knew everything that I knew now, I wouldn't have started it. Like, I didn't know. That blindness, though, enabled me to continue to keep going. The second reason, which is the one that I know and I believe to be true, is that I knew what we were offering was something that was needed for the game of basketball. I truly believed that my mission in life is to elevate people to achieve the highest version of themselves, the highest level that they can be. And I knew that this event was going to allow players to have an opportunity that they would not have had without our event. And so I kept going. And there was times leading up to the event, like the week leading up to the event, where we were wondering, like, is this going to work? Is this going to work? We had paid the deposit. And I wasn't rolling in cash. And I kind of went on a limb here and put it up front. Like, I was like, let's go. And so I think, really for me, when people were telling me no, part of it was, okay, that's good advice. That's good to know. I'm glad to hear where you stand. but their no's started to make me ask different questions, right? Their no's started to make me ask, well, why are they saying no? And then it started to also get my underdog mentality triggered, which is like, you're telling me I can't? It's basically like they were saying, you won't. And I was like, watch me. Because I was just like, we got to go for it. Like, let's go. And I live by this, and it's go big or go home. Like, simply put, like, go big or go home. And there was a time where I'm not even going home. I'm not even going home empty-handed. But I was like, I got to give it a try, and I'm taking it all the way to the end because I truly believe in this. I have enough validation that people are already paying, and I believe that we can get to the point where we need to be for it to become a viable business option and a real great place to add value. So the second question follows up is, what is my biggest fear? And Justin, it's great to hear from you, my man. Great to hear from you. Is my biggest fear, and this is something that I've actually been focusing a lot on during quarantine, right? Because I've had a lot of time to myself, as we all have had. My biggest fear, and I go back about it all the time, but I think my biggest fear stems from two things. One is this expectation in myself, and that no matter what I do, I'll never achieve the thing at the top of the mountain, right? And part of that comes just because I'm ambitious in nature, and my dreams and aspirations are so big to the point where for a long time, I was embarrassed to say what they were because I wasn't sure people could comprehend it. And I didn't want to be that weird person that had completely different dreams. Like, I didn't want to outcast myself because of my dreams. But then I heard someone say, it's not your responsibility to make other people dream bigger, right? Like it's not your responsibility to live other people's dreams. It's your responsibility to live your life to the best that you can. And then another fear is like, I innately, I think a lot of us have this fear too, it's like the fear of failure, right? But the fear of failure leads to so many other things. Like, what if you try? What if you try and it doesn't work out? Then what is everyone else going to think about you? If you try and you fail, then people are like, oh my gosh, like you're a failure, like you suck. But guys, the big thing for me is like, failure doesn't control me anymore. When I feel fear of, especially of failure, it's like, that's when I attack it the most. Because I promise you, if you fail, but you try, it's so much better than the regret of never doing anything. And so for me, like, as I continue to build and take chances, it's like, I got to embrace that there's uncertainty, and I have to become comfortable with knowing that there's uncertainty in life, and we can keep on going, keep on fighting along that journey. So I would say that's one of my biggest fear. And to be honest, like, when you say take a leap of faith, I'll position it this way for my final comment on this question is, sometimes you don't need to take a leap of faith. You need to take a step of belief. Okay. And what that means, and my dad told me this, and he's one of my heroes in my life. And he said, sometimes, we think we have to take this huge leap of faith, but we're not ready for a leap of faith. We might need to take a step of belief. And over time, those steps will lead to a bigger leap. And if you take that and think about any big habit, any big dream, any big goal that you have, you can dive completely in and figure it out, or you can take one step at a time. And the people that go one step at a time continuously get better. And those that continuously get better keep coming back because they love that they're getting better. And the people that keep coming back and continue to get better eventually reach whatever it is that they were seeking. And so I think that that's something that's really important when it comes to failure and goal setting and habits and taking a leap of faith is focus on one step at a time, small wins. And you can look at this thing, this is from Atomic Habits, the book, but if you get like 1% better every single day for a year, you will be 37 times better than you were at the start of the year. But if you get 1% worse at every day, you will end up close to zero. You'll back even. So there's a graph, there's a chart that I have, and it's in Atomic Habits. It's a really great one. But it's the point of just getting better every day and facing fear head on because it exists. So it's acknowledging it. Okay, I think I see another question. Is that right?
Yeah, we have one more question from the audience, which is, hey Jake, from Jake Apostle, what would you consider to be your greatest strength and your greatest weakness?
Am I getting interviewed right now? This is a great interview question. I think my biggest strength, I haven't answered this question in a long time, but I would say one of my biggest strengths that I possess is the ability to connect with people, to connect to people and connect people with other people. That's one of my superpowers. It's one of the things that I believe I do better than almost anybody in the world. One of my biggest weaknesses and one of my biggest strengths is my optimism and positive outlook on life. and my belief that we can do anything, right? One of my biggest weaknesses, I think one of my biggest weaknesses is I tried to do it all myself. And I'm at a point in my life where I need to be able to trust other people and hire other people to do things the right way, not necessarily my way, but the right way, their way, that gets us a better result. And sometimes my weakness is like, I just feel like I'm pretty good. I'm good enough. So I should just do it, because otherwise I have to train and do something else with someone else. And that's something that sometimes is tough. And I'm sure Justin and Jake, who have interned with me, like, I'm sure you guys have seen that there were some times where, like, I was like, you know what, I'll just do it. And it wasn't that I doubted you guys. It was that I felt like I could just do it quicker, right? And sometimes as a leader, as a manager, like, it's something that I'm constantly working on. I get better and better every time we have new groups of interns and new hires and contractors and employees. And it's like, but I'd say that's one of my bigger weaknesses is that I like to do it all myself because I know it'll get done at an extraordinarily high level. But now it's about opening it up. And just like going back, it's having this we mentality to believe in everybody to get us to a higher mountain than the one that I'm capable of going on my own. And that's a really big lesson that I'm continuously learning and trying to get better at. But there are a ton of things that I can get better at, and I try to acknowledge those in myself and try to keep working on them. And that's what it is, right? That's what life is like enjoying the ride and sucking for a little bit, trying something and flops on its butt, and then getting back up and doing it again and just keep going. And look, when you can have fun in this, whether you don't get an internship, you don't get a job, you don't get this, whatever, like, you're going to look back 5 years and be like, damn, like, that's actually kind of funny now. Like, look where I'm at now, right? And
Yeah.
if you keep going, and you look back on just experiences that happened within the last year of your life. Like, if it doesn't matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes thinking about it, right? That's a quote that a lot of people say about it. And so I would just say, when it comes to that, is just embrace your weaknesses. Don't shy away from them. Attack them head on. But at the same time, leverage the heck out of your strengths, because that's what makes you different than everybody else. That's what gives you your unique power over somebody else who's competing for the same things that you are.
Thank you for explaining that. We have a couple more minutes, or actually we're really about done, but I just wanted to ask one last question and then kind of wrap things up. So I understand one of your idols is Magic Johnson, and you had the opportunity to ask him a question, which I found to be incredibly insightful, and I'd love to ask the same to you. How do you handle the pursuit of greatness and the desire to be the best at what you do with the process of living and being in the moment?
What a great question you asked. No, I love this question. And the reason, so the background on this question is I believe that every person has a different definition of success. And I believe that we should live our life based on what we define as success, not what society defines as success, okay? And there's a huge thing, because when we can take control of what success looks like to us, that's when we can pursue success relentlessly and enjoy the journey at the same time, okay? And so for me, I define success at this moment in my life as having the freedom to do what I want, when I want, with who I want. And I'm continuously seeking more and more of that. That's what success looks like to me. And at the same time, every single day, I put myself in a state of present moment living. So I try to, and it's hard, and I'm always working on it. But what I've really tried to get really great at is have these ambitions for the future, have the goals, but then every day take those actions, but enjoy the doing part of the journey, right? Enjoy the actual labor of it, right? Like, going live every single day might not be fun, but I'm committed to going live all of the time because I know over time it's going to produce the results I'm seeking. And I could say, oh gosh, I have to go live again today. Or I could be like, let's go, baby. We're going live. Like, maybe 25 people listen to it. Maybe 100 people listen to it. Maybe it's doing a conversation like this, just an intimate setting, right? Like, whatever it is, success is about this pursuit of greatness while enjoying the journey at the same time. It's about taking every day and finding a small win, taking every day being being gracious, every day appreciating what you have, not what you want, right? Appreciating what you have. And then it's about taking action, putting action into your life every single day. And if you do that, that's when you can start to live your definition of success, not success based on other people's definition. So that's what I got for you. Well,
Jake, thank you so much for your time, your advice, your stories. I know I'm not the only person that learned a lot today. And I wanted to give you the last, couple minutes to plug anything you want. I know that we talked about you have a special offer for the book and maybe something else.
Yeah, for sure, man. So first of all, I would love to stay in touch with all you guys that are on here. This has been awesome. Ben, you've done a great job. All you guys, I know this time has been hard for everybody, but we're getting through it and we're pushing through it. So great job on organizing all these things. I've been tuning in and following along the journey, which has been awesome. So kudos to you guys. And then, yeah, I mean, as a little thank you for you guys taking the time today is I got my book here, right here, Elevate Your Network. I want to give you guys all a free copy. So I bought a bunch of these when we started quarantine. I bought a bunch of copies of my book, and I'm giving them away for free. All that I ask that people just pay a small shipping fee just to cover some of the basic costs. But the book is entirely free. So I'll send you a link for that as well. But if you go to, and we can put it in here, but if you go to freebook.elevateyournetworkbook.com, that will be where you guys can get a free copy of the book. And yeah, so that's what I got for you. And then if you guys have questions, message me on DM at Jake Kelfer, and would love to stay in touch with you guys. I share a lot about the journeys, the failures and successes along the way, because like I just said, we got to enjoy the journey as we pursue the greatness. So that's what I got for you guys, but I appreciate you all for spending some time with me this Friday afternoon.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And Jake, thank you for always being there with the SSBC team since day one. I know I don't just speak for myself when I say we're really grateful. So,
awesome.
Thank you for joining us, and hope everybody has a great weekend. Take care.